committee for being on this hearing for our amended budget. And first off, I want to congratulate a new chairman of K through 12 Education Appropriations, Chairman Todd Jones. And thank you, Todd. You'll do a great job here, and so glad you're doing that.
Thanks very much.
And also, I want to acknowledge Sarah for all her hard work on going through this amended budget, and then later on the big budget. So, but today I just again thank y'all for all being here, and we're gonna got three speakers to speak to their budget or to their areas. Got Amy Jacobs with DECAL and Joy Hawkins. I see you with GOSA, and then we got DOE also as well. So without further ado, Amy, why don't you take it away and tell us what's going on at Department of Early Care Learning.
Okay, well, thank you, Chairman Dickey. I want to make sure you guys can hear me too. Technology is a great thing. Okay. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great.
Perfect. Technology is a great thing when it works. We're all adjusting to this. So thank you, Chairman Dickey, and thank you, committee members, for the chance to talk to you a little bit this afternoon. As far as the amended fiscal year 2021 budget for DECAL, we are section 22, but we do not have any changes in our budget for the amended budget. I thought I would go over just real quickly how DECAL has adapted and responded to COVID as it relates to our programs and services to children in the child care industry. So I'm very proud of the DECAL team. We have not missed a beat. We quickly adapted when the public health emergency began in March, and are continuing to offer all of our programs and services and supports that we always offer to our early learning industry. Our work continues virtually. As you know, we monitor and regulate 4,500 licensed child care programs throughout our state. The health and safety of those programs are critically important, and we are able to continue to do those visits virtually, so we can make sure that those children that are in those programs are safe. We also continue to support our pre-K programs virtually. Our pre-K specialists are able to support our teachers in our classrooms virtually. Our inclusion support services, which are our specialists that help teachers who are dealing with challenging behaviors in their classroom, which there are more of them now, of course, as children adapt to all these new procedures and masks often. We're able to help them there. We continue to support infants and toddler teachers with our professional development. Our pilot, where we are building the quality rated language and literacy endorsement, is continued, and programs are still engaging with us on that. You may remember that I've talked about we had a big goal where programs must be quality rated by December 31st of 2020 in order to continue to receive CAPS, which is our child care subsidy program, which helps low-income families pay the cost of child care. Well, obviously, we had to move that goal out a little bit, so we've extended it to December 31st of 2021. A big part of quality rated is going in the classroom and doing an assessment of the teaching practices, and obviously, we can't be in those classrooms right now. So we had to come up with some different ways to do this so that programs could continue to increase their quality. We had a really great momentum towards that goal. In March, actually, as of today, 82% of children who are receiving our CAPS subsidy are in quality rated programs, and 70% of our programs that serve CAPS children are already rated. So we have great progress, and knew we needed to keep that momentum. So our quality rated staff has been able to quickly adapt and develop processes so that programs can continue to receive that professional development and increase their quality and receive a 1, 2, or 3-star rating. Over 500 programs have been rated this way since April. So that's all good news. We're continuing to move forward with that goal. We also changed our CAPS policies very quickly so that there will be no interruption in services for children who depend on these financial services to pay for childcare if their parents had some type of temporary job or wage reduction during COVID. We also developed a lot of resources for parents, especially when they were primarily home with their children at the beginning. Pre-K at home and toddler time were some easy web-based resources that we provided. And using some emergency feeding procedures with our summer food service program and our child and adult food service program, we were able to serve 45 million meals from March through December for these children that no longer had access to them because schools were closed. So I'm very proud of our team for that. As far as the industry that we support, which is the childcare industry, they have absolutely been impacted like many other industries have by COVID. Back in the March-April timeframe, only about 30% of them were open. They had made really tough decisions to close. The good news is we've watched a steady increase since March, and they are beginning to reopen. As of most recently, 97% of childcare in Georgia is open. What we're also seeing, though, is that their enrollment is down. On average, across the state, their enrollment is down by about 25%, but their staff needs have not really decreased at that same level. So they still have those same costs for their staff. And of course, the additional requirements that we have on them regarding sanitation and PPE type things has also increased their cost when they're actually receiving less in tuition because of decreased enrollment. So, now more than ever, we've always recognized the importance of quality early learning for brain development and setting that strong foundation for future growth. But we know that childcare is needed for parents to go to work. And so we are working really hard to help stabilize that industry. Very recently, we received some money from the federal government through CARES funding. We received $144 million. And that money has gone directly out the door to childcare programs, either through payments, through 2 rounds of what we call stable payments, which were direct payments to childcare programs, or through some of our CAPS emergency payment policies, where we continue to pay programs, whether they were open or closed, for the children that were receiving a CAPS scholarship. We were also able to set up a CAPS Essential Services Workforce Priority Group, where we were able to provide 1,000 scholarships to help pay for childcare for those essential workers that had to go to work every day, especially in the very beginning of the pandemic. We also do anticipate that we will receive a little over $400 million from this latest Appropriations Act from the federal government, and are developing that plan now. The direction has been very clear that that money needs to go out the door to childcare programs to help stabilize that industry, which we are in the middle of developing that plan now. In September, with the help and support of the governor, we received $17 million of the GEARS funding to create a program that we call SOB, which is Supporting On-Site Learning for Virtual Education. And this is a financial scholarship program for school-age kids whose school districts are virtual, but their parents still have to go into work, and they need somewhere for their child to go to be safe and supported. And so to date, we have awarded about 4,300 scholarships, which helps students have the access they need to childcare so that they can get that support they need in a safe environment while their parents go to work. As far as Georgia Pre-K goes, we tried to be really creative and were able to create and develop 3 different models for instruction for this year. We knew it would be very different, but we wanted to make sure as many 4-year-olds were served in our Georgia Pre-K program. So we created 3 models that programs could choose. One was traditional, face-to-face, hybrid, where you could do, partly traditional, partly distance, and then 100% distance model. 65% of our classrooms are traditional, so they are completely face-to-face. 10% have chosen a hybrid approach, and then 25% have chosen that distance model. But Georgia Pre-K continues, and the work continues in early learning in Georgia. Those are just a few examples of how we've tried to respond and support the early learning industry in Georgia. I'm happy to take questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Amy. Great report. You've been mighty busy
Yes.
doing all this. Thank you for all y'all do and holding it all together. I know it's been a challenge for everybody in the education business, and so good. It's glad to hear those facilities are pretty much back open, and that's great. Has anybody on the committee got any questions? Should be happy to answer anything. So as she said, I guess all of the committee, y'all have tracking documents, so really no changes at all in the amended budget for decal budget. So not hearing any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I know Chairman Jones will be reaching out to you, Amy, for some in the future on some other things as far as your budget programs go. So thank
Excellent. You. Look forward to it.
I know everybody's busy. I'm sorry again about my issues starting, but I see my friend Joy Hawkins here with GOSA. Welcome, Joy. Thank you for what you're doing at GOSA. And so why don't you give us a little update on your budget, your programs you got going. I see you sent some sheets here, and
Right.
so turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And, you know, it's so good to see everyone back. So thanks again for your support and for all of you who supported our 4 programs and the research, audit, and evaluation function. So for amended budget, it's at 27.7, no change. We were able to put, like Commissioner Jacobs, during the time that the schools closed, as most of you in education, most of our work was in the school. And so the silver lining in that is we've been able to pivot and do so much virtually, continue to coach, continue to train, and do the things that we were doing, but from a virtual setting. And so from the state's perspective, that's a great cost savings in travel. But I've been just over those 4 programs. And as the Chairman said, we have sent all of you a 1-pager on the Growing Readers program historically. That's the professional literacy program for K-3, where teachers are trained in the best practices and consistent nature of teaching young children how to read. And the goal there is to have them reading proficiently by the end of 3rd grade. This program's been in effect since 2015. It was organically grown through the RESAs, pre-me GOSA staff, one of which is still on our staff, Stacy Lutz. And through the years, we've been able to train 1,760 teachers. Now, when I say that, understand that these are Georgia teachers. And so the work done to train these teachers is sustainable. And then 54,200 students over the years in 269 schools. So you can see the impact in the exponential growth happens every year with approximately 12,000 new students being trained by these trained teachers. So you have that 1-pager, and then you have 2019-2020 readers evaluation, which just shows some of the survey results from teachers who participated and leaders. So any questions on that program before we continue? Okay, here I'm going to go to the Governor's School Leadership Academy. Since the beginning of this fiscal year, we had to cut back on the teacher cohorts. So we have 2 cohorts trained teachers and teacher leaders. Because of the cuts, we had to really focus on aspiring principals and principals. That's a year-long program training these aspiring principals and principals since 2018. Since that time, we've had 65 principals trained and 108 principals. The 2 cohorts of of new teachers and teacher leaders, the design has been, the model has been designed, and during this phase, during the budget cuts, what we would traditionally do would be work through the RESAs with specialists and coaches to work in the schools to train these teachers. What we've done is we've created a module so that teachers can access that training online anytime. What we would like to have those coaches back because it's so important to have that hands-on experience with the teacher. So just keep that in mind as you move forward. Any questions on that? The 3rd program is Jackie Lundberg is on the line now. The Georgia Awards, the state's longitudinal education program that was created during the Race to the Top days. We have been able to continue that program. There was a deficit of about 29,000, but Jackie, do you have anything to add on that?
No, I was just going to say, because it is a data system and dashboards and it's mostly technology, a lot of it was able to be done virtually. So that that whole program hasn't really even seen a dip.
And then the next program, unfortunately, because of the closings and because the nature of COVID in the spring and summer of last year, the Governor's Honors Program, we had to cancel. And that was not without a lot of deep thinking and working with our instructors to try to figure out if we could do a virtual version of that. But because of the very short runway and because of the safety aspect of it, we had to make a decision to cancel. So what we committed to the rising juniors last year, which are rising seniors this year, there were 180, is that they would be able to come automatically without having to go through the application and interview process again. And so from that, as of today, we have 75 who are committed to coming back. A typical class for Governor's Honors, 650 students. Because of the delta in what the state has provided and what we might need for the additional 75, there has been an amazing group of alumni who have organically formed a steering committee. They have raised private funds with since November of over $15,000. And so knowing that about $2,000 is needed for each student to attend the program, which is a 6-week summer program during this June and July, that would allow for at least 7 or 8 new students to attend in that 75-member cohort. So just know that, you know, if we go in person, we would have, I mean, there's continuing. So they have a goal of 100,000 by the end of March. If we don't meet that goal, there may be a need for additional funds in FY22. But, you know, kudos to that private group. That's a great example of public-private partnerships. And, you know, so many who have attended the program have just shown us how it was life-changing and just such a great experience that, you know, led them to become principals, CEOs, and others. So 900, a little over 900,000, I'm sorry, 1.6 million for the program as a whole. Also, let me just point out in this application process of the 180 school systems, and Chairman Dickey, I know that this has been a concern of yours. We only had applications from 19 of our larger systems, which was disappointing because we've really put a lot of work into trying to get the word out to local systems. I'm just going to say because of the pandemic, people were just moving so quickly and there were so many disruptions this year. Please help us spread the word next year. And we've been doing that through our RESAs and through our superintendents and Gale. So we're hoping that this time next year, we'll be able to report that there are students who have applied from all 180 systems. Are there any questions before I get to our next area? Okay, so our final area is just our statutory responsibilities for research, audits, and evaluations. Obviously, the audit process has come to a halt because of the in-school opportunities. So we're working with the Department of Education and State Board to figure out how we conducted meaningful this year since we didn't have a milestones exam last year. Moving into next year, if we move forward with an school year 21 milestones, we'll be adjusting and pivoting our auditing process likewise. Our research reports and so forth, we just completed a workforce report for teachers and leaders, which will be published next week. We look forward to having comments from you about that. We still face in Georgia some issues with teacher retention and shortages and diversity. A real lack of diversity in our workforce. I believe that's all I have for right now. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Anybody got any questions for Joy? Joy, I've got a question. I want to go back to about your sorry, I'm multitasking here. Too many things. Going forward this year with your student achievement institute, I understand you are going to do a class this year, but smaller. Is that right?
On the governors. Is that your question?
Yeah. So you're breaking up just a little bit. Say it again.
So on governor's honors program?
Honors program. I'm sorry.
Okay,
yes.
gotcha. Yeah. So we're at a place of pause until we see how much money's raised from the private sector. We're in the process of.
Okay. You don't have enough money in your budget to do what you have been doing in the past. Is that?
It would be a stretch. That's right. Especially if we're in person. If it's hybrid or virtual, we have a better opportunity to spread what we have right now, and with the new class of 75 plus the 650.
Okay.
But for planning purposes, if we're planning toward, and this is what we've got 3 plans for: in-person, hybrid, virtual. Our hope is, of course, we go in person. If we go in person, we're going to be stretched.
Okay. When will you make the decision whether you're going in person or not? I mean, what's your cutoff date for that?
So we really need about 2 months runway to get prepared for the in-person. There are some moving parts, including a nurse on premises, food, et cetera, that we have to plan for. So with the program beginning in June, like mid-June, probably by mid-April, we will need to make a decision.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions concerning GOSA's budget programs or anything for Joy?
And I want to thank your staff. They've been incredibly easy and wonderful to work with.
Thank you. I know y'all got a challenge, and appreciate all you do there. And I know it's been a little bit of a change in the last year or so. So thanks for hanging in there.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hey, can I ask a quick question, please?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
On the governor's honors program, would it have to be funded through the mid-year budget, or could we fund part of it through the next year's budget? Is this all of the funding that would be available to it?
So we kind of split the funding. The most of, and Jackie, correct me if I'm wrong, traditionally, most of our upfront money would be for FY22. I'm sorry, FY21, and then the remainder for FY22. So, Jackie.
So to answer your question, we could work with it either way, since it is just a one-time for this year. For those students who could not attend last year, we don't want to take away the cohort that is eligible this year to, to cover those. And so
to compensate.
To compensate. So these would be additional, obviously, 75 students. And so either way, we can work with it. If it's in FY21, we would pay, but a lot of the contracts, because it does cross over fiscal years from June to July, are not going to come due until FY22. And so we can work either way.
Okay. So in your planning, if your planning changes a little bit, we could make some adjustments even going into next year if we need to.
That's right.
We can. What I'm trying to do is not mess with our base budget, so that we are not getting in a deficit for next summer. And so, but as far as which fiscal year it needs to come out, that we can work around.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's a great program. I've had an opportunity to go down and meet with them and speak with them a couple of times, and I really want that program to have everything it needs. I think it's well worth whatever it takes to put into it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Nix. It really is. And I'm just overwhelmed with the outpouring of support from alum and some of your colleagues in the House and some in the Senate who have really stepped up. And it's just amazing.
Good to hear. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much, Joy. Appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for all y'all do.
Okay. Next on our agenda, Department of Education, Rush Roan. Thank you. Good to see you again.
Yes, sir.
This week. And but anyway, I'll turn it over to you, and maybe you can fill us in on this amended budget.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman Dickey, and members of the House Education Committee for the opportunity to present the governor's recommended fiscal year 21 amended budget. As you know, the budget instructions and governor's recommendations have exempted the formula and its core components from any further reductions in FY21. And we're very grateful for this. And we're also excited to see that the recommendation includes restoring approximately $577 million in austerity cuts to local districts, which equates to about 60%. Now I'd like to go, if everybody's got the tracking sheet, I was going to go through the changes to our budget and give a little bit about each one of the changes. As you can see on the first page, the agricultural education 24.1.1, we have an increase of funds for austerity reduction, which is $505,000. That's restoring the cuts, which you'll see in many parts of our budget. In 24.8.1, in the GNETS program, there's austerity restorations of about $3.7 million. In non-QBE, 24.11.1, you'll see an increase for austerity restorations to the feminine hygiene grant of about $420,000. That was the only grant in that program that we applied austerity to. That's why the restoration is just to the feminine hygiene grant. In our preschool disability services program, 24.13.1, we have another austerity restoration of $2.5 million. In equalization, 24.15.1, we have a reduction in funds. This is to correct an issue that was with some veterans and homestead data numbers that the governor's office got from Department of Revenue. Cartersville City, we did make them aware during the year and we updated their allotment sheets, but this reduction of $829,000 is to correct the appropriations documents to match the corrected data. The next one, the local 5 mil share, we had to correct that as well for the data for Cartersville City Schools. Our next program, the big one, Quality Basic Education, or QBE, 24.17. You'll notice that we've got an increase in funds for enrollment growth of $41 million. We've got the State Commission Charter School Supplement for new schools and a hold harmless provision in there of $26.4 million. You've got an adjustment to the State Charter School Supplement for T&E of $3.3 million, and that's updated when growth exceeds 2% or higher. We update their CPI data for the formula and rerun it. You'll notice an adjustment for training and experience to correct some data for Coastal Plains Charter. That adjustment was, they were correcting some data reported in the CPI. They had some staff incorrectly recorded as direct instruction, and they cleaned that up, and that's going to be a reduction of $4.9 million. You'll see an increase in the formula for the midterm adjustment for charter system grant based on FTE of $419,000. And then the big one, which is the austerity restoration of about $567 million into QBE. And that makes the new austerity number about 4.09% of the base. Next, we've got our RESAs, 24.18.1. And that has an austerity restoration as well of $889,000. Our CTAE program has an austerity reduction, 24.22.1, which is $674,000. And then our testing budget, as you may recall, in our fiscal year 21 budget, it was reduced in anticipation of us being granted a waiver for the 2020-2021 school year. Our waiver, as you guys are aware, mostly probably aware, was denied. And so federal law does require us to perform these tests. The increase of the 5.3 million will allow us to perform these tests and satisfy the law. And also included in our testing budget, 24.23.2 is about 1.1 million in order for us to update the Georgia Milestones, GKIDS, and our Keenville assessments to align with the new math and English language arts standards. And the final one in the testing budget, 24.23.3, is just an increase in funds based on participation in the PSAT and AP exams of about 362,000. Finally, our last program adjusted for fiscal year 21 amendment is the tuition for multi-disability students, 24.24.1, and that has an austerity restoration as well, and that one is for $93,000. And that's pretty much the changes with our fiscal year 21 amended budget. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Thank you, Russ. Appreciate that. Pretty straightforward in our tracking documents. Is anybody on the committee got any questions of anything?
Let me ask another one, please.
Yes, Randy.
You said that the austerity cuts now are down to like 4%. Was that the number that you gave?
Yes, sir. About 4.09, I believe.
So we're 96% fully funded on QBE. Is that what that means?
Yes, and in addition, we funded growth. So that's of the base. It's of the 21 base, our austerity that we're applying is just 4%, and then growth was also funded. So that is correct statement.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a question, and it's sort of a big picture question. I don't think you've got an answer for it, but restoring these austerity cuts, school systems already made adjustments early in the year to their budgets. They're rocking along, appears to be pretty well right now. Restoring these funds will do what as far as these school systems, as far as QBE or any of these restorations? Just could you speak to that? And also speak to the fact that the federal money, have y'all got any details on the amounts and restrictions on how it will be distributed?
Yeah, first given the district's local flexibility and, in the varying circumstances and, with the CARES Act money and, it was allotted based on Title I, most of it was based on Title I allocation. So there's different circumstances within each district, so it's really hard to try to pinpoint, one area where the funds would be used. But I mean, some of the things that we've heard in our department, specifically like our financial review, who deals with our districts day to day, they would use these for such things as offsetting increased expenditures with COVID-19, building up reserves. A lot of these districts had to tap into their reserve accounts to cover some of these shortfalls. And those reserves, they do have requirements of how much they're supposed to keep on hand. Some of them may be increasing or updating technology for the increased demand for remote learning. And then, professional development for training teachers in a virtual environment. Those are kind of some of the items that we've heard at the department. I know Matt Cardoza is on the line if he wants to give a CARES Act update. He's our CARES Act guru.
Hey, good afternoon, Chairman Dickey. Good to see you. What Russ said, I think for CARES is exactly right. The allowability of the funding is probably the most flexible federal funding that we've ever seen. But it is indeed supposed to be tied to any expenses to offset COVID related expenses that they had. So as I think I might have mentioned the other day, that the second round of funding that they're going to get will be going out and available to them very shortly, because our board just approved that last week. But yeah, as he mentioned, there's so many of the additional expenses that districts are putting in for right now, PPE, equipment, a lot of technology. that districts weren't one-to-one and able to do remote learning, that now they are, and things of that nature. So any other particulars, I'm happy to try to answer those.
Okay, thank you. I've got one other question. Chairman Nix, are you still on? He and I worked with Georgia BioEd. We got a line item in the budget, Russ, and we seem to really be having issues trying to get that program funded every year through your department. Are you familiar with, I don't think they've still gotten any of their funds to train those teachers so far this year. And are you familiar with how that funding stream works with Georgia BioEd?
I am not. I'm not sure if, I don't know if anybody else, we've got a few staff members on there. If anybody else has, I can research and get you an answer for that. If,
we're budgeting that and really having a real problem trying to make that work. They're ready to go with their teacher training, and they haven't received any funds that I've been told. And we need to find a way to streamline that a little bit better going forward.
Yes, sir.
And so
Chairman Dickey, this is
yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. This is Tiffany Taylor with the department, and I know that it sounds like I don't know the details, and it sounds like Russ doesn't know the specific details of this. So it sounds like maybe a program that had gotten shuffled when there was transition, but we're certainly happy to, I think, have a discussion with you so we can make sure we understand what the issues and concerns are with the program and what happened.
Okay, we just need it fixed going forward. I'm just, it was the same issue, it seems like now that it was last year. And it's a program, Randy, are you familiar with what's going on? I mean, I think they ran a great program last year, and just want to keep that going.
Yeah, I think it's a good program. The training is there. I don't remember the details of how it was to be funded. So I'd have to take a look at it too, but it's something we need to make sure we are doing if at all possible.
Any other questions?
Chairman Dickey, yes, sir. I had a question. Under 24.11, under non-quality basic education formula grant, increase funds to offset austerity reduction to feminine hygiene grant. Can y'all elaborate how much is in there now, and then what would it be? How much was it cut?
I believe, if I'm not speaking wrong, Matt Cardozo can answer me. I believe it was $1 million, or no, it was cut down to 800,000. Is that correct, Matt? Matt is also over the feminine hygiene grant. It's a good thing we had him with us.
That's correct. With this restoration, it would go back to 740, and it was originally at $1 million.
It was at 1 million. This would take it back up to, I don't know, roughly over 2/3 or something. And then, how is it distributed?
So what we've done with the formula is we've taken a look at basically 6th grade to 12th grade. And based on talking with experts in the field and school nursing staff, and looked at economically disadvantaged students, and then breaking that out by school level, and then dividing that in half, basically, because that's about the population ratio of female and male. And so we've distributed it based on a per school amount for students, and then we've rolled that up to the school district level, and then distributed that out to them. And then we communicate largely with district school nurse contacts to let them know, obviously, that it's there, but also some of the best practices. We've worked with a group called Georgia Stomp, which I think you're familiar with, to try to really help get that word out and ensure that school districts know about it.
So originally, my impression was when I first came up with this, I'll just say my goal was for it to be distributed in such a way that it primarily goes to low income. Which, you know, is hard, not easy necessarily to do unless you just come up with some simple formula. But I believe originally it just went out on a per student basis, you know, half of the per student, which really wasn't the intent because the Decatur probably doesn't need any, to be honest. I mean, it's pretty high income, or, you know, they have a very high per student spending. Same with the city of Atlanta. But then we have school systems that have very poor population and very little local funding, or, you know, local or total funding. And the concern is that girls are missing school because they don't have access to this at home. And so that would be the only thing. I mean, however y'all do it, I mean, obviously, I mean, I leave that up to you, but I would encourage you just to look at it. And since it is limited funding, I would hope we could get it up to full funding, which is still kind of a drop in the bucket, but to encourage girls to have access, to have enough to take home. You know, it's not just while you're at school. And right. So, I mean, we could leave it up to local school systems and their nurses, but I would encourage you to direct them to send it to where they have a higher population of low-income girls. And sure. But it's, you know, it's also low wealth school systems. Like I said, I mean, a Decatur has enough money that they can do this on their own.
Right.
But a Brantley County might not.
Right. And we'd certainly be happy to work through any change in formula that we need to do. Okay. We sure. did, of course, try to limit it to just economically disadvantaged students, but to your point, it went to all districts, knowing that some you know, economically disadvantaged students are in all school districts. However, if we need to shift that to deal with the lower wealth districts only, then certainly we'd be happy to work with you on the formula for that.
I'll just follow up with you, Matt, maybe if that's the best way to do it personally. Just, I mean, I want to take y'all's direction too, but it'd be different if we just had unlimited funds here, but it's a pretty small pot of money, and I'd like to feel like we're making the most of it.
Yeah, and Speaker Pro Tem Jones, to your point, I think when we originally had the $1 million, as Matt said, we did try to focus on the students in poverty in all of the districts. You know, sure. Like he said, then provided, you know, some districts are districts that, you know, they might have had a small population, but they still got something for that small population of sure. students in poverty. Obviously, when we went down to I think it was about 300,000 this past year, then we did focus more on high poverty schools, as opposed to then, you know, spreading it out sort of across the board. So, right. You know, yeah, to Matt's point, I think that, you know, as the funding comes in, we're certainly wanting to focus on, you know, those populations and those students in areas where they need it the most.
Thank you. And I don't want to make y'all's life difficult because you got a lot of bigger fish to fry, but, you know, it was an issue that was brought before the legislature. The alternative was a tax credit or tax break that I didn't feel like really addressed a need. And so that was why the money was appropriate. And I just want to be able to demonstrate that we're trying to, you know, address a problem for girls that don't have access to products.
Absolutely. And we hear from our school nurses and school staff all the time about this particular program and just how grateful they are for those funds and how those supplies are utilized by girls in those schools. So it is definitely has been a worthwhile program.
Thank you, Tiffany. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam Pro Tem. What any other questions for Matt or anybody, Rusk at DOE? Any other questions? Okay, great. Any other areas, any other of our members got questions about? Sarah is available and Molly. So thank y'all for being here. Sarah, you got anything you need to add about anything on the tracking sheet? Or I just want to tell the rest of you members here that be looking for a notice of another meeting that we'll need to do some finalization of the amended budget coming up very shortly. I think we'll be sending that out this afternoon. Sarah, anything?
No, we're good. That was the last agency on the agenda.
Okay. Well, if it's not anything else, thank you all, presenters. Thank you everybody for being here. And if there's no other business, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank y'all. Thank you, Wes, Randy. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.